Well, hello again, students. Welcome back to English classes. Today we are going to look at something in grammar. Now, the last time we met online, I had taken a reading comprehension class with you, and I told you that I had created this email ID so that all the students who have problems could contact me directly, and I would try and answer your questions. Now, very few students actually got back to me on this ID, and I have already answered their questions, so there is nothing to take up in this class. All right, but I would encourage more of you students to make a note of this email ID and get back to me if you have any problems regarding the lesson that we are about to discuss. Now, today I have already done one class on grammar where we discussed nouns and determiners. Now, I don't know if that class has been uploaded yet, and if it has been uploaded, I don't know how many of you have actually seen it. Now, this is in continuation with that. So the next part of speech I wish to discuss today is verbs. Now, in my opinion, verbs are the most important part of speech. Now, the reason I'm making this statement is that we must have at least one verb in a sentence. All right. Now, if you don't have a verb, the sentence usually is incomplete and doesn't convey a complete thought. So therefore, the verb becomes the most important part of speech, and there's a lot of confusion regarding what a verb actually is, and many students, many learners of English make plenty of errors using verbs and tenses. Now, the reason we confuse verbs, the reason we make mistakes with verbs is because English is not our mother tongues. So the usual process when you are working with 2 and 3 languages, the usual process is you think in your mother tongue and you translate into your target language, which in this case is English. Now, when we are translating, we are not translating words, we are translating ideas, we are translating our whole linguistic system. And then what happens is we normally pick up the grammar of our mother tongue and try to translate that into the grammar of English, and therefore we have errors. So today we'll try and clarify all these. We'll try and simplify. I've done my best to simplify the nature of verbs, what they are, what they do in sentences, and so let's begin. Let's have a look at. So the first thing is a definition. Now, what we learned in school was that the verb is a doing word. Now the question is, what is this verb doing? Now, as you can see in this little diagram that I have created, there are 2 main categories. So what exactly is the function of a verb? Now, the first thing is that a verb is or could be stative. Now, what do I mean by stative? The verb can carry a state of being. For example, I am a student. All right. We are studying online today. All right. We have also a state of having. I have a new bike. My neighbors have a new servant. So these are the 2 different states that we have. Now, neither of them is actually showing any action. Okay, so if you consider, if I give you sentences like this, where are we? Yeah. So if we say that if I say his father is an engineer, we have this as the verb. Okay. Now, how do I know that is a verb? Because if you look at these 3, 4, 5 words, and if I ask you a simple question, how do I know that is the verb in this sentence? Out of all the 5 words, this is the only one that's actually telling me whether the sentence is in the past, we are talking about the past, the present, or the future. So his father is an engineer. So since we have is an engineer, is not, the father in the sentence is not doing anything. So we say that this verb just carries a state of being. Okay. Now, sorry. Okay, here we have he has a new car. Again, the verb this time is has. Again, has is not telling us what he is doing. It is just very simply a state of having. So these are what we call stative verbs. All right. Now, the next verb that we have, or these are other common verbs referring to these states, like know, believe, like, love, hate, remember, suppose, understand, want, wish, etc. Now, why it's important for you to know this, all right? Remember this, that stative verbs don't usually take ing. So, if I make a sentence like, if I make a sentence like, I all right, let's say this is sentence A, and if I sentence B, okay. In both cases, I've used the continuous form of the verb. Continuous, why? Because the main verb is ending with ing. Now, I have used the same verb, but have I used it in the same state? I am having a meeting, I am having a new bike is just a state of having. I possess a new bike. All right. Now these two verbs, the state of being verbs and the state of having, the stative verbs, these cannot be used with ing. So therefore this sentence is grammatically not acceptable. So instead of saying I am having, I just say I have a new bike. In this case, in the B sentence, I am having a meeting. Now this is not a state of having, this is a state of doing. I am doing something, I am having a meeting. So in this case, because it is not being used as a stative verb, therefore ing is correct, so sentence B is correct. Sentence A, however, was incorrect. So keep this in mind, because many times when we are using English, we use these ing verbs without really knowing what the state of the verb is. All right. The next verb that we have is the traditional action verb. All right. Action words meaning the state of doing. So these are the three states now: the state of being, the state of having, and the state of doing. And please keep in mind what I have just told you, that the verbs that carry states of being and states of having cannot be used with ing. All right, only the action words can be used with ing. Right, moving ahead. The state of doing verbs, there are two different types of them. So we have the transitive verb, and of course we have the intransitive verb. Now you've heard these terms being used very frequently in your classes. Now what exactly does a transitive verb, what are the functions of the transitive verb, what is a transitive verb, and what is an intransitive verb? Very simple. I'll just give you the brief explanation. Transitive verbs contain objects. Okay. Now when we talk about objects, we can have either one or two. An intransitive verb does not have any object. How do I find an object? Use this very simple formula: subject plus verb plus whom or what. All right. I'll just give you some examples. Let's say my father bought me a new bike. All right. Now, the subject, the doer of the action, is obviously my father. So this becomes the subject of my sentence. The verb of the sentence is this. Now, before we start fooling around with transitive and intransitive, remember that the verb must carry a state of doing. If it carries any of these states, it cannot have an object. All right? So these verbs do not carry objects. And only the transitive verb carries either one or two objects. So, my father bought. So the first decision you need to make is, which state does the verb bought carry? Does it carry a state of being, a state of having, or a state of doing? So my father did something. Okay, he bought me. So my father bought. Now, my father is the subject. Bought becomes the verb. So my father bought whom? That is me. So this becomes object number one. What? A new bike. So this becomes object number two. Okay. See another example. The teacher gave the students an assignment. Okay. Now again, what is the subject of your sentence? Obviously the teacher. So this is my subject. So following that formula, again, what is the verb? Gave. So the teacher gave whom? The students. So this becomes object number one. The teacher gave what? An assignment. Becomes object number two. Okay, this is how we work with objects. Now keep in mind, objects become confusing sometimes to students who are a bit casual. Why does it become confusing? Because there are two different parts of speech in English that can have an object. One is the verb, the second is the preposition. So verbs and prepositions carry objects. Now see. All right. Now firstly analyze, this is, of course we know that this is the verb. All right. So I spoke to him. Spoke carries which state? It carries a state of doing. I did something. Now, can I apply that formula which I gave you just now? Subject plus verb plus object. It can't, because please apply this formula very, very strictly. What is the subject of the sentence? I. What is the verb? Spoke. That's it. I spoke whom, I spoke what, there is no answer. If you borrow this preposition, I spoke to whom, then of course you get him. Right? But him is not the object of the verb spoke. Him is the object of the preposition to. So since the verb does not have an object, this verb becomes alright? See another sentence. Okay. The subject is dogs, verb bark. So dogs bark whom or what? No answer. Dogs bark at whom? You get strangers. Alright? So again, strangers is not the object of bark. Strangers is the object of at. So the verb again becomes okay. If you are still confused, if you are still confused, try a very simple test. Now in your schools you have experimented with active and passive. Now remember, only transitive verbs can be changed from active to passive. And of course vice versa. Intransitive verbs cannot be changed. States of having cannot be changed. States of being cannot be changed. So, if I give you this sentence, all right, can you say whether the verb gave is transitive or not? So you've got the subject my father, the verb gave. You've got two objects here, me and some money. So you can easily convert this into passive. You could say I was given some money by my father, or some money was given to me by my father. Okay. Convert this, you'll have to take two and say that this now has now become a phrasal verb. You're joining the verb and the preposition to together here. Now you can convert it into passive. So he was spoken to by me. Okay. Strangers are barked at by dogs. Is that clear? If you say that if you take a sentence like this, can you convert this into the passive? There is an action, birds do something, so there is a state of being, but it cannot be converted because there is no object. So this is the difference between a transitive verb. They contain objects, they can be transformed from active to passive. Intransitive verbs also carry a state of doing, but they cannot be converted into, they are intransitive because they have no object, and they cannot be converted into the passive. Okay. Now moving ahead, let's have a look at this. We have main verbs and we have auxiliary verbs. Now auxiliary means basically the helping verbs or the supporting verbs. So the question is, what do these auxiliary verbs support? Of course, logically the answer is that the auxiliary verb must support the main verb. Now in modern English we have up to 3 verbs that can be used as auxiliaries in a single verb phrase. Now see, if I give you something like this, John has been studying English for many years. Okay. Now the verb in this sentence is this complete phrase. Okay. Now how do I analyze this? I move in this direction. Move backwards. The last word in the phrase becomes the main verb, and everything else before that becomes the auxiliary. So in this case we have two auxiliaries and one main verb. Okay, now every clause in English contains one main verb. The main verb may or may not have auxiliaries. Like if I say John studies English. John studies English. What exactly is the verb here? Only studies. So obviously this is a main verb. Right. Now, first these are the two different types of auxiliary verbs that we have. We have what we call the modals, and we have what we call the primaries. Now modals changes the mood of the verb or changes the meaning of the verb. Alright, now what exactly are these modals? Basically the modals are a group of 10 verbs. So these are the pure, what we call the pure modals. So you've got will, would, shall, should, can, could, may, might, must, and ought to. Alright. But we have other verbs, other phrases which work like modals, and we usually refer to them as semi-modals. Now, what exactly are these semi-modals? These are some of them. Used to, need not, dare not, have to, has to, had to, would rather, had better. So these are modals. Okay. Modals, as I said, number one, these modals change the meaning of the verb, change the meaning of the verb phrase. Okay. Modals introduce futurity, that's one, where we use will and shall commonly. But don't get confused with tenses, we'll deal with that later. So you got futurity, you have possibility, probability, capability, then doubt, okay, permission. These are some of the functions of the modal. Now, for example, if I say I will go to Delhi after the lockdown. So now we're obviously talking using the futurity part of the modal. I should study. I should study. What is that? Is it on this list here? I should study? Or would it be better as a sort of advice? Okay. I can study, ability. Okay. I may study. You're fooling around with the possibilities and probabilities. I ought to study. It's good for me. Right. Semi-modals have the same meaning. I have the same function. I used to study. I need to study. I need not study. All right. I dare not study. whatever. Okay. What happens when we use a modal? Two things to notice, like he is studying for the test. Okay, so this is my verb at present. So as I told you earlier, the last word becomes the main verb, and this we are left with the auxiliary. Now, we've got one auxiliary and obviously one main verb. If I use a modal from here, it will obviously be used before it. Modal is always first in the verb phrase. Alright, so a modal could be used here. And what happens when we use a modal? Then the verb immediately after the modal gets changed to its base form. The base form of is be. So you use a modal, so he will be studying, he could be studying, he can be studying, he may be studying, he might be studying, he must be studying. You can use the modals. What happens in each case is the meaning of the sentence changes. So this is the main function of a modal. As far as the primaries are concerned, now modals are only used as modals. They can never be used as main verbs. They are only used as modals. The group of primary verbs, on the other hand, these are the primary verbs now. So the first family is the verb be, as be has a total of 8 members in its family. So you have be, am, is, are, was, were, been, and being. Then you have the have group, which has, has, and had. All right, and then you have the do group, which is do, does, and did. So if you have a sentence like this, if you have a sentence like this, you know immediately that this is the verb. All right. Now this verb, this is main, this is auxiliary. Now you can tell immediately that this auxiliary comes from the primary group, and here it is here. All right. So do you understand this? The verb in the sentence is do and understand. In a question, what happens is the subject is inserted in the middle of the verb. So you know that do is the auxiliary, it belongs to this particular group. Now, the primary verbs can be used either as auxiliaries or they can be used as main verbs. And as auxiliaries, they help the main verb in forming different aspects of the tense and in changing from active to passive voice. All right. So if you have two sentences, she is a student, she is preparing for her entrance exam. Okay, in both sentences I have used the verb is. However, in this case, is coming by itself, so therefore it must be a main verb. In this case, is part of the phrase, so in this case it is being used as an auxiliary. Now this is only possible with the primary verbs, it is not possible with the modals. Alright, I hope this is clear to you. The main verbs, on the other hand, this is something which you probably know. Looking carefully at this chart, you'll find that the present indefinite. We have the present indefinite, the past indefinite, and the participles. These are the three forms. We used to study them as form 1, form 2, and form 3. Alright, so these are the names given to the three forms: the present indefinite, the past indefinite, and the participles. The present indefinite is broken into two: the infinitive, which is the simplest or the base form of the verb, and the third person singular verb. Now the infinitive is used with these subjects: we, you, they, or plural nouns. Right? And the singular, the third person singular, is used with he, she, it, or singular nouns. The past indefinite is not divided into two sections. The participles are divided into the past participle and the present participle. Now what is the difference here? The two indefinite verbs can be used independently. The participle requires an auxiliary verb. So when we talk about auxiliaries, we say that the participles require primary auxiliaries. Okay? So if you want to use, for example, if you want to use played in the sentence, you can say I have played, or he has played, whatever it is. Okay? Indefinite verbs do not require primary auxiliaries. Modals, of course, can be added to anyone, because the modal will just change the meaning of the verb phrase. Alright, now you notice that some of these verbs on the list end with the traditional ed. So form 2 and form 3 both end with ed. Now these verbs, we call them regular verbs. Alright, so the regular verbs end with their eds, and the other ones are known as the irregular verbs. So like a verb like this, for example, go. And each verb in English comes from a family that has 5 members, except the modals and except the B group. So these are the two exceptions. Modals do not have any families. Okay, just will and would, present and past, that's it. Alright. The last 5 verbs, I'd like you to study them a bit carefully. They are very commonly tested. And they're very confusing verbs. Now, for example, the two hangs. If I give you a sentence like the rapists in the Nirbhaya case were hung recently, the sentence will be grammatically unacceptable because I have used the wrong verb. If I say were hung, you hang an object. So you hang things, you hang your shirt, you hung your shirt on a hanger. Right? You hung a picture on the wall. But when we are talking about hanging people, people are hanged. So the convicts in the Nirbhaya case were hanged, they were not hung. Alright. Now this lie means telling lies. This is the easy one. So he lies, he lied, he has lied, that's it. These two are very, very troublesome indeed. Lie and lay. Now, if you study them carefully, you'll find that this one causes a lot of confusion because you have lay here and you have lay here. Alright. Now this is, for example, the hen laid many eggs. So we are using this word. Okay. The hen lay many eggs, or the hen has laid many eggs. The hen lays, I've confused that. So the hen lays eggs, or the hen has, this should be lain, this one should be laid. So the hen lay many eggs, okay, or the hen has laid many eggs. Whereas lie, the old man lies in his bed all day. the old man has lain in his bed all day. So laid would be wrong here. It should be lain, and this one should be laid. Okay. Let me give you some examples. Okay, let's have a look at some sentences here. Okay, here are two sentences here. So the terrorists have laid or lain down their weapons. Now how do you decide whether I'm going to use laid or lain? Now keep in mind that as I showed you just now, we have two, you've got lie and you have lay. Okay, so you have lie, lies, lay and lain. These are the 5 members of that family. And here we've got lie, lay, lays, laid, laid, and laying. These are the 5 families. The one on the chart had a bit of a problem, so this is the correct thing. Okay, now please remember this, make a note of this. All right, this verb is intransitive, and this one is transitive. Now, do you remember the difference between intransitive and transitive? All right, the transitive verb contained at least 1 or 2 objects. Formula I used was this to find the object. Intransitive verbs do not have any objects. Okay, how do I find whether there are any objects or not? Okay, let's take sentence number 1, the terrorists. Okay, my subject. This is my subject. This is the verb. We have to decide which main verb we should use. The complete verb is actually have the complete verb will end at this point, since we are using a phrasal verb here. So the verb will be this till here. Okay. Now obviously there's an action here, so we can apply subject plus verb plus what. The answer to the what is their weapons. So since this is a transitive verb, I should use which of these 2 options? So the correct one would be, alright, so this is the answer. So the terrorists have laid down their weapons. Now similarly in this case, subject is he, verb is, now this is the subject, this is the verb. Is there an object present here? Can I say he has laid or lain what or whom? Since there is no answer, there is no object. Since there is no object, the verb becomes transitive. Now if the verb is transitive, if the verb is intransitive, we are going to use this family. So since I have an auxiliary verb, I will use the participle. So laid would be wrong in this case. Laid would be the correct. Lain would be the correct answer. So he has lain in the hot sun for many hours. Is that clear? Okay. Okay, so this needs to be changed. Please make the changes over here. All right. This is wrong. Please correct this. This should be laid. And this should be laid. This would be lain. Okay. So as I said, that lie and lay becomes intransitive, lay becomes a transitive verb. So is that clear? Okay, let's take this last exercise and maybe we can finish for today. So let's have a look at modals now. So if you are sick, you go to work, you'll infect everyone there. So what kind of modal can we use here? You can say if you are sick, you mustn't go to work. All right, you can say do you think there are any other verbs or modals that are relevant in this situation? I don't think so. Okay. What about drivers stop at red lights? You could say drivers should stop at red lights. Drivers must stop at red lights. Drivers need to stop at red lights. Drivers have to stop at red lights. There's so many of them that we can use. Okay. You finish the proposal today, tomorrow. So what we'll get is, you can say you needn't finish the proposal today. Okay, that would be about the best modal that we can get here. Okay, number 4, she hear much better with her new hearing aid. So the best option, she can hear. You want to be polite, you could say she could hear. Okay. Number 5, shall I, can I, may I, okay, could I. Right, number 6, Sam pick his daughter up from school, she taking the bus home. So Sam so Sam needn't, Sam can't pick his daughter up from school, maybe. Okay. Then you smoke here, it's a smoke-free building, so you shouldn't smoke here. Okay. You can't smoke here. You mustn't smoke here. These are all possibilities that we have. Okay, you eat so many sweets, they are bad for you, so you shouldn't, you mustn't. Okay. 9, you mind walking a little faster, we are going to be late, so would you mind? I'm sorry, I help you, I don't know how to do it, so I'm sorry, I can't help you. I don't know how to do it. Alright? So I hope we have understood what we have discussed today. We will take it forward in the next class, the next time we meet. So for today, thanks very much. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope to see you soon. I hope to see you in the next class. Okay, goodbye for now, and please don't hesitate to call me or to contact me on that email